Okay, good evening, everybody. My name's Rachel Richards. For those of you that I have not met, I am super excited to be with my dear friend Amanda. She is an equal partner to Think Life is Different Estates with and corporation with Jamil Frazier, and an Optavia coach, a mama expecting right now and also chasing plenty of other babies around, a wife, and has just is one of the nicest people that you'd ever meet. We always say if you don't like Amanda, something wrong with you, because she's just as nice as they get. So I'm so thrilled to have you help us unpack the 12 shifts from your perspective. We've got a lot of questions. Some of them I sent you already. But I think, I'd like to kind of just get you warmed up with the idea around like, can you take us to, I feel like a lot of times, Amanda, we see people that have dedicated the time, they've put all the blood, sweat, and tears, and we meet them at the point of incredible success. And so that's like how we know them. They may be the leader or the this, or we see sizable, income, or we see sizable influence. And in our minds, we meet them in the space of they've arrived. But we really want to go back to those humble beginnings. And can you describe just some of the humble beginnings of what it might have looked like from your point of view when this was brand new and just getting started?
Totally. No, thank you. And again, thank you so much for having me on. This is a pleasure. Got to kind of sneak away from the littles for a little bit. So this is fun. No, so okay, so to kind of unpack the beginning of us, I mean, and you have to remember we both were, I mean, this was over 10 years ago. So we both were not as developed as we are today. Um, and you're right, like you meet someone like you meet Jamil and who's so I mean, I call him like the old wise man, and he does the way he listens to you. Like if you have a question, the way he listens to you, the way he breaks down what you're saying, and then he answers. Or sometimes he doesn't answer. And if you'll notice, Jamil rarely answers a question. He answers with a question. So that's all skills he's developed and skills that I've watched him develop and I've developed myself. So like being alongside him, I'm going to be candid here because at that time, you read the book. So you already, he's described, what life was like back then. He was very self-involved, but I was also very self-involved. We both had very different visions for what our life and our marriage should look like. Okay, I'm going to say that because that's important, how it should look like, right? And we had these ideals, and it was really tough because we did not see eye to eye, and we didn't realize how much we did not see eye to eye going into our marriage. We were very, very, very different people. And so it was really difficult. The first couple of years were awful. I mean, it really was. And especially into our business, if you think about it, when he started coaching, we had only been married maybe 2 years. And we were very raw back then, very raw in terms of like, we still didn't work well together in our marriage. So there was a lot of moving pieces at that time that were really difficult. So we had a rocky marriage. We didn't know how to be partners, number one. So we definitely didn't know how to be business partners, for sure. We didn't know how to be parents together, and we had a son at 1 year old at that time. So it was really, really tough. So being the spouse, because we had two very different visions at that time, this coaching thing to me was just a side gig, like go do your thing. I didn't see it as the full picture of what coaching really is. I saw it as this weight loss thing. Go do your weight loss, go help some people lose some weight. And it wasn't until, gosh, I think maybe 4 years into when he was in the business, did I really kind of come along and see the bigger picture of what the business was, that it wasn't just a physical change. It was a full body mental, and what he was learning along the way. And I will say my ego puffed up a lot because there were moments where I did see little changes in him because he grew so quick in the business that he did get thrown into trainings like Sundance and all these higher level things where he was being mentored by like Dr. A and some of these higher level coaches, or they were bringing in these mentors that he was learning a lot from and he was really trying to implement. But me, the spouse, wasn't quite growing at that time. So when he would when he would say something a little more profound, or he would attempt to kind of use some of these tactics or whatnot with me, I would kind of undercut him. I would go back to the attack mode, or like I'm the victim. I played that victim role really well. I kind of wallowed in it because where we were, he wasn't the nicest person at times. And there were times where there were things that kind of happened to me, but I lived too much in that. And I started to see that. And once I started going to trainings with him, is when I also got to develop to where it's like, I don't need to live in this victim role. Like, yes, things have happened, but I don't need to constantly remind him of the villain he played 3 years ago. You know what I mean? So it was a lot of learning. Like he did learning, I mean, a year or two before I did, and I kind of played catch up. And it was difficult. I mean, did that kind of answer your question, Rachel? Sorry.
100%. Really colorfully too, and honestly and authentically, showing us that there's times where even when we're growing, someone is going to stay committed to the old us and go, what do you think you're doing? Are you Jedi mind tricking me with that Optavia stuff? Are you like, did you just come back from a little pep talk and you think you're going to use it on me? Right there, I get it. Like
Yes.
I've lived it. not
Yes.
not not your story. I've not lived your story. I've just lived in that you're trying to grow, but you're cast in a role that is established, and people will resist that because it's very uncomfortable and it makes them look at them. And I love how you're saying, like, I can own that now. I stayed in that wallowing or that victimhood. When would you say there's 12 shifts in the book, right? Do your own push-ups, land of plenty, growth equals pain. When would you say you shifted where you had your own aha and caught the vision yourself, authentically for yourself, not to add to him or anything?
With coach, like caught the vision of coaching or just the
Coaching,
team.
yeah. Yeah, the mission, I'd say, like when did it reach your heart, like your own heart, regardless of if he was with you or not?
I would say it was I want to say it was 2014. Convention ended up being here in Anaheim, in California, which was really cool. I'll never be in California again. But I went to my first convention in 2014. Mind you, Jamil had started coaching in 2012. Okay, so 2 years after. And he invited me. He never, well, at first he would push me like to go to events, but I resisted. And in 14, I started to realize, well, okay, so there's a couple components to this. So one was he wasn't just saying things. It wasn't all about his words. It was also his actions. So to put into context, like if we got into an argument about something, it wasn't just our typical arguments, they would get explosive. Like I got defensive, he got defensive, it blew up. We both would basically puff our chests out at each other. I mean, it was an ego competition, 100%. And I started seeing he kind of backed down. He would then ask questions. And it was I could see the wheels in his head turning where like he wanted to explode, but he was stopping, challenging, and choosing his thoughts. And I started noticing little things like that. So I'm looking at his actions, I'm not looking at his words. And then in my background was with, I worked with children with autism. I was a behavior specialist. And so I was really realizing that coaching was basically behavior modification for adults. And I was doing behavior modification during the day with the kids. So for me, it was like, okay, I can do that. Because in my head, oh, sorry.
You're good. Yeah, you're good.
Sorry, I just got a call. Because in my head, I saw coaching as like sales. Like, oh, he's a salesman. Like that's what I thought it was at first. But when that shift happened in like 2004, because it was, oh, here's another thing. In my job, because I worked at the school district, come summertime, I don't get paid. And that was a big contention in our relationship. I mean, it was always like it was an uncomfortable feeling for me because here I am like, okay, so summer's coming, so you're pretty much handling all the bills and all that. And so it was like that uncomfortable, like, oh, okay, he's about to be mad at me for 3 months, like this is like we played that dance for years. And so we're coming into the spring and it was like, all right, this is gonna be another tough season. And when I started to realize that what coaching really was, I was like, oh, I can do that. That's something I can do. Sorry, we got a little visitor. Real quick.
You're good.
Hi. um, he's like, what are you doing? So and of course at the time I didn't want him to coach me. I didn't want a business with him. So this is something you do not do. But at the time, I contacted Karen, who's our Karen Elstrom. I contacted Karen and I became a coach under Jamil, which that's a big no-no. You don't ever do a married couple, your business together. So I had become a coach under Jamil and had my own business growing. And I was doing really well because I was like, oh, I can do this, And so, but there was a lot of ego still involved there because I didn't want anything to do with Jamil and all of that, right? So Karen ended up contacting me and was like, hey, just so you know, like you have to shut down your business. You guys need to coach together, which technically was a huge blessing because it forced us to have the uncomfortable conversations. Because now I like started seeing this mission. I was like, oh, I can do this. That's something I'm totally on board with, And so here I want to do it too, but I don't want to coach with him. But we both have our egos flaring about it. So then it made us talk about how to do this together. And so that's when things started. We had to find our own niche within the business together, which we went through different seasons of what that looks like for us. But that's kind of, it was about 2 years into him coaching. That was when I started to kind of come around and really found like the mission of the business and what it's really about, not what I thought it was about.
Got it. Yeah, that is so good. A couple of questions that kind of lead into that too that came from the group was how can we best, now that you can go hindsight, I think Mel asked this, how can we best support our family, our clients through their shifts? Like, what do you think is the best way to support someone that's unbecoming? That's unbecoming everything they were never meant to be and becoming everything they felt called to be. Like, what would be some words of wisdom that you would give anyone that's watching those shifts if you could go back and do it again?
Totally. And it's going to sound silly, but it's going to be communication. But also and this is something we learned together, was communication from the one doing the work. Because what you'll often see here is the one, like, so for instance, in our situation, Jamil, who was doing the work and really trying to tap into being a better person and his full potential. He did have me, which was kind of the negative, the naysayer and all that, right? So, but what happened is he wasn't good at communicating to me what it was that he was trying to accomplish. So I'm over here kind of putting him down because it's in human nature when you start to be uncomfortable with someone else changing near around you, near and dear, close to you, you kind of pump the brakes. Like it almost it throws you off because now it's like, well, there's nothing wrong with me,
Mm.
right? So, um, what would have been really helpful then is his community, because also I didn't see his vision of why he was doing well. He communicated what his vision was at the very beginning, which wasn't um what's the word, wasn't very authentic, and is not something that I bought into because it wasn't the full mission of like what the company was, right? So that was communicated at first. So when he started to really dive in and all these shifts started happening for him and he was really doing the work and implementing it, what I knew was these old ideas that he had. He didn't communicate his new ideas, what his goals were, like what that goal for the year was, what the goal, the 5 year goal, what the 10, he wasn't communicating any of this. So for the spouse over here, the family member who has no idea what's really going on, but maybe some back in like past information, that's what I'm feeding off of. And that's where a lot of the negative energy came from. Had he communicated, no, this is for us, because at the beginning, it was for him.
Mhm.
It wasn't for the family. And we already had one child at that point. So I didn't really know like this was for him, that he's spending all this time, he's spending all this energy, all this money, all this time away. But here I only knew of what was in it for him, not for us to benefit as a family. So it sounds silly, but that is going to be my biggest word of advice is for the one who's doing the work and really trying to implement change. Communicate. Communicate with your spouse, communicate with your family, the kids. Yeah, that's a big one, is the buy-in from the kids, especially like our kids are a little older now, but getting that buy-in. And what I mean by that is um letting them know what you're doing. So as the spouse now, how I can be supportive is when the kids still do this, will make comments like, oh, dad's always on the phone. Oh, dad's always on on a trip. Oh, why does dad always have to leave? Here I am, because we've communicated and we've also explained to them what our family mission is and what we're doing is, well, remember what, because we're able to go to dance class and jujitsu and horseback riding because daddy is putting in all this work, because dad's doing this, and because all this stuff. So having that buy-in with your spouse, with your kids, those around you, your close circle, and that all boils down to communication.
That's so good. And I think otherwise we're left to just make up stories, right?
Exactly.
And,
That's
and they're not going to be good ones. But just, I think even you're hitting on something in communication. I would say the vulnerability of someone coming to you and saying, honey, I've never felt this good about myself. I've never felt a part of something. I've never felt like I actually have a ticket to get us the life that we've dreamed of. Like,
right.
I need your faith and trust in me. I need your prayers. I need, and I'm just imagining like kind of what you're describing is be vulnerable in that communication of, I'm also scared. I don't want to fail. Like, it's taken me a long time to learn these things, so I'm on a lot of trainings. Will you be patient with me? I've never done this before. I've never been a CEO before. Like, I would imagine more families would be supportive if we would communicate in that deep vulnerability
Yep.
versus just maybe the high level things like, I'm going to buy this big house or whatever. And we're like, well, how long is that going to take? you know,
Right.
so like, I love
Exactly.
that was big stuff right there. Is it an exaggeration or would it be accurate to say that Optavia, the community, the mentorship saved your marriage? Is that exaggerating or is that pretty accurate? Like, what would you say?
I would say it's pretty accurate. I mean, because I think back, if I didn't dabble, because I don't really coach right now, as it is, just with three little ones, one on the way. Um, had I not dabbled in the community, in the experience, actually coaching coaches myself. I mean, because I coach coaches and clients myself. So it gave me a good understanding of what he does. Now, I'm not saying every spouse, should do that. That's where communication would come in on the coach's side for, communicating what it's like to the spouse so they get an understanding. But that helped because I was immersed in the community, and I continue to be immersed. So even though, like, you'll see me at most of it now, you won't see me at convention this year because I'll be like 7 months pregnant. And so I'm not going to Atlanta in 7 months pregnant, but I still go to events. It's a breath of fresh air for me. Um, it helps me stay connected to the community, you guys, the mission. It helps ground me. And as a stay-at-home mom, it gives me a break. It helps me kind of breathe life back in. So yes, I would say a huge part of our marriage being saved has to do with Optavia, the community, and then the growth that I've also gained from joining in on it. So being there at the trainings, and even like, because of his level, the higher level trainings. And so and it's sometimes, I would be asked by, as our oldest son, why do you go to these? And I said, well, because I apply it to my life. I may not coach daily, but I apply all the principles and everything to our life and to you guys, the kids. So, I mean, mama needs a lot of emotional intelligence too when you're dealing with 11, 7, 3, and then a newborn. So,
Absolutely. And I love that I've, been privileged to see you raising dreamers. Never forget the day I was over and Ezra was doing his trash pickup service for the community. And like, it's incredible. And I think about you, we'll say like first ladies, right? Of Optavia. It kind of leads me to your connection with Lori Anderson, right? So, the first lady of Optavia, which many
yeah,
of you have not had the privilege of meeting, she passed away. I know
yeah.
she was special in your life and had
Hmm.
an impact on you. Can we honor her just a little bit tonight, like, and bring
Absolutely.
her into the call a little bit and just share what that was like for you?
Absolutely. Oh, you made me a little teary. I'd bring her up. But uh, she, okay, I don't even know where to start with Lori because she's amazing. And it truly breaks my heart for people who did not get to meet Lori, because she's Dr. A's wife. And if you think back to, what was it, 15, 16 years ago, when this crazy man had this idea to drop everything. He was a top level physician in top of in the country, well sought after. I mean, they had a nice life. And you think about his first lady, basically his wife, having this faith in him. I mean, I'm sure they had and that's where it's fun. Where I got to learn Lori was that they did have their issues. They had their troubles and whatnot, like we did. And that's what made her so relatable. And why I just hold her so dear to my heart, because I got to learn from a distance, even because they're amazing. I mean, they're high up there. But I got to see how they interacted and how she took on the challenge of being the wife with two young kids, packing up their entire life, moving across country to support her husband's dream. Okay. And then she jumped in and did this business with him. She was the very first health coach, of which wasn't even Take Shape for Life. It was gosh, I can't even think of the name, but there's a whole nother name at. And so she was the very first health coach. Okay. So you think about this woman who took on a lot, and now she's pioneering what this mission is today with her husband. And they basically had a group of people that came in, and Perry Miller was one of the first. And okay, so now you have a personality like Dr. who is dynamic. He is high driven, high performance. I mean, I think of it as we have German Shepherds, like a working line German Shepherd, just go, 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 just full of life, full of energy. That's Dr. A, right? I mean, if you've met the man, he is super, super passionate. He's very wise, very smart, and constantly working on himself to better himself. So you think about that. And then you have a spouse over here who seems like she is just like an angel on earth. Like she's just like, she's got it all together. She's got 2 grown kids now, and she's just this powerhouse. And I got to kind of see an inside of, because at Sundance, which is a certain retreat that happens every October in Utah, she was very raw one year. And it was so cool for me to see because, and also at the time, our second child was 4 months old, I think. And I brought her with me. And we were in that stage of life of moving into 2 kids, and it was chaotic. And our business is booming, and it was hard. And she stood up on stage and she goes, okay, so I kind of have a funny story here. I'm supposed to talk to you guys about emotional intelligence, but I have to be real with you right now and tell you that right before coming on stage, I was very, very upset with Wayne. And that's because she always referred to Dr. A as Wayne. She was like, Wayne pissed me off. And she was very raw. She's like, I was so angry because he always loses his room key. Mind you, we're at a resort, a mountain resort. And she goes, he always loses his room key. And I'm getting ready to walk out to come here to speak. And he like bum rushes me and says, give me your key. No, because you'll lose my key, and that's the only key we have left now. And she says, I'm standing there so angry because he lost his key. She goes, so here I am going through all these emotions. And then she said, she just started laughing because she's supposed to come out and teach us about emotional intelligence. And she's exploding on her husband right now. And her husband's like, what's the big deal? Just give me your key. Like, I need to get in the room. You need to go. Give me your key. And I sat in the back. I had tears rolling down my face because I was just like, she's so real. Like that's so relatable.
Mhm.
And because there's so many times where no matter how much mental work I've done, I'll have those moments of like, oh, he makes me so mad. Like, why do you do that? You know, and here's Dr. A and Lori, and they just have the same moment. And so in that same presentation, so she gives that whole, she tells what happens, we all laugh, and she goes into her teaching. And she was talking about how every time she notices when Wayne, Dr. A, is leveling up. And what she meant by that is when he's really digging in and doing more work on himself, it almost, the way she put it was, it kind of created like a threat to her because it was like, so do I need to level up? Like it was like this, her ego was toying, like it was this back and forth of, so what, I'm good. Like, I'm really great. Like, I don't need to be better. And this, all this internal turmoil that would happen. And I was sitting in the back, just crying. Cause I was like, that happens to me all the time with Jamil. Cause Jamil is he's like a German Shepherd, a working line German Shepherd. Go, go, go. High energy. And he's like a mini version of Dr. A. And here I was feeling like I was on an island alone with these feelings of, I can't keep up with this man. And I felt inadequate and I felt less than. And it was the same feelings of, well, shoot, he's leveling up. He's working on himself. I need to work on myself, but now I'm angry because I don't need to work on myself. I'm great. And like, it was just all this mental stuff happening. But here is Lori and Wayne, Dr. A, going through the same thing. And it made her so relatable. So I didn't feel crazy. Um and so one of the I'll just end with this story. Um it was the Go Global event in April in Orlando. And Jamil was part of a team that was it was the Optavia One group that they were really making changes within the company and whatnot. And so they treated us to stay at the Ritz Carlton, and all of the leaders in that group were having a special meeting at the Ritz Carlton. And so I was just kind of walking around the hotel waiting for the meeting to end, and I saw Lori in the lobby, and she was always so sweet, like, but the relationship I had with her was more of in passing, more, hey, how's it going, how are the kids, just more on the surface, right? And so I saw her sitting by herself, and I really wanted to go talk to her. And I had that moment of, she's so busy, she doesn't want to talk to me. Who am I? Like, we're way down on the totem pole. Like, I'm not going to bug her. That was all my internal chatter going, right? All stories I made up in my head. So I walk past her and I go down to the Starbucks. I grabbed a drink and I turned around and I was like, don't be dumb. Go over there and go talk to her. So I go back and I was like, hey, do you have me? She goes, I don't. She goes, I'm about to hop on a call, but it's a quick assessment. And then I want to talk. And it was like, all right, cool. So she gets on the phone, and right then all the guys came out from the meet, or all the leaders came out from the meeting. So they had to whisk us away for a lunch. So we jump on the bus, we go to this lunch. We never had our chance to talk. She ended up dying the next month, like a few weeks later. She had a massive heart attack. Sorry. She had a massive heart attack about 3 weeks later, and she passed away. And as sad as I was in that moment that she passed, and I kind of had that regret of, like, I never got to have that conversation with her, but I was really thankful and I was proud of myself for getting that chatter out of my head and realizing that she's just a person. Like, she's me 20, 30 years older than me, like 20 years older than me. And so she's got 20 years of experience under her belt. And she was probably in one of the same positions I was in 20 years prior. And so I was able to overcome that fear and that chatter in my head and go approach her. And to my surprise, she really wanted to talk to me as well and spend time with me. And had I not, it was almost like when I found out she had passed, it was like I kind of had that, I don't even know how to describe it, but that peace that, like, she was an amazing woman. That's someone just like me. And I just need to keep working on myself and so when I think about, like, sometimes when events can get a little overwhelming, I think about Lori and how she presented herself, and she was always so approachable. And as being like the first lady of Jamil, it can sometimes be overwhelming. And so I think about how Lori took and held that position, and how she was with such poise, and how she always presented herself. And so I just, she's near and dear to my heart. And so I always try to implement, like, what Lori was like and how she carried herself.
I love that. And you do that very well. You're extremely approachable and
Thank you.
welcoming. I love, if those of you that are local, the Frazier House is open for a pre-convention party this Saturday,
Yes,
and that's all that you manage. The unsung hero is, I'm a fire wife. So a lot of times
you
people
get,
walk up to Tim, thank you for what you do. Thank you for what you do. And
yeah,
a lot of unsung heroes behind every hero, right?
for
And
sure.
we definitely recognize as a group that Jamil could only do what he does if he has your constant support, whether it's the littlest things or the biggest things, and all the sacrifices that you make so that he can serve all of us. And we just really honor you for that. My last question, if I could, is he's like a two percenter, right? Like you're mentioning, like Dr. A is a two percenter. Um, we service the 98 percenters of society, right? And most people are not going to go that distance. They will shut off their brain at night and get their 8 hours and all those things, right?
Yeah.
So what would you say to the people that are supporting extraordinary people in their life, like dreamers and visionaries? And how trying can that be to be married to like a two percenter, right? That's going to go the distance and is truly an extraordinary person.
Right. And it is trying at times. But that's where I've really had to dig deep on my own emotional intelligence and just constantly growing, communicating. I mean, just all the things I've already said. It's just
Mm.
um, digging in deep, especially in times of frustration. I mean, we never kind of lose, our mantra as clients of, stop, challenge, choose. You, you never lose that. I mean, you constantly have to, and, but really it's E plus R equals O, right? In the,
Yep.
in situations. And when you are married to a two percenter, um, it's a lot of times is stopping to think about the factor story. That's number one. Am I did I just create a story around fact, or or the story that I made up in my head? So am I reacting based on the fact or the story that just created? Um, a lot of times it's also being very patient, which is hard, especially when, I mean, we have almost 4 kids now, and there's a lot of moving pieces, and being flexible, being able to pivot quickly is key. I mean, prime example is today. So I had already planned that we had my gym, swim class, a play date. I had this call, and then there was gymnastics and jujitsu today, right? Well, at like 12 o'clock, Jamil flies in with a, oh, just so you know, so this is happening at 4, at 3 o'clock. And then I'm like, the old me would have exploded. Said, no, we've got our plan. Sorry, your plans are, what you want to do isn't going to work.
Mm-hmm.
And it would have been a problem. But it was like, okay, this is what's happening. This is what you got planned. This is how we can make it work. Move. And it's a matter of me being able to pivot and quickly shift and not stay angry or resentful or anything like that. Because I mean, in the grand scheme of things, that's not a big deal. That's what I've also had to really learn is it's not a big deal. Not a big deal. It's not life threatening. It's not life altering. It's not a big deal. And so like he'll throw at me, oh, just so you know, I have some coaches coming over tomorrow. Oh, okay, how many? Oh, like 30. Okay.
We know my friend's not last minute or that's the one thing we love him with all of our hearts, but I always tell our team advance notice. No.
Doesn't have.
Just in the gifting when they were passing out stuff, you got heaps of emotional intelligence, but planning and communication, that's going to be lower, you know. So God
And
bless you for dealing with that.
that's kind of what you get with 1%ers. Like
Yeah. Oh yeah.
they're the fly by the seat of their pants. It's an idea comes in and boom, implemented. And it's just like, or the idea is thrown at you and now you have to implement. So it's just like, it's being able to keep your head on a swivel.
Yes, absolutely. It's, my grandma used to say that, like, it's not cancer, it's not a 10, and it is. It's a good reminder to go through that. Well, we love that. I think what's encouraging to all of us is, in closing, is your honesty, your integrity, your authenticity, and the fact that these are not books on the shelf in the Frazier home. that they're actually being implemented
Right.
perfectly or imperfectly, gradually or
Mhm.
quickly. That this isn't just some Optavia tagline that we're all putting out there. That when you meet, what I found my first Sundance, what I found to be true is that actually the leaders are committed to living it out perfectly or imperfectly, but there is a strong commitment to
Totally.
this is the way I want to live my life.
Totally.
And it's truly puts you in that 1 to 2% of all people. So thank you so much for giving us this precious time. Thank you guys for submitting a lot of these amazing questions and prompts. That was super helpful. But we just love you so much, and we appreciate the both of you. And the Richards organization is super grateful for your time. Uh,
Thank you.
so
Thank
yeah,
you so much for having me on. This has been really fun.
yeah, we love it. Thank you. We'll see you soon. Well, we won't see. We'll see you. Locals will see you Saturday. All
Saturday.
right. All right. Thank you, friend.
Bye.
Take care,
Thank
everyone. Good night, team.